The Philippou brothers, Danny and Michael, first burst onto the global horror scene with their unforgettable 2023 debut, Talk to Me. Produced by A24, the film was a chilling and emotionally complex story of grief, trauma, and possession. A unique blend that earned them widespread acclaim. But if Talk to Me proved they were rising horror auteurs, their follow-up, Bring Her Back, cements their place among the genre's most exciting contemporary voices. Not only is Bring Her Back more emotionally devastating and narratively rich, but it also includes a subtle, brilliant reference to Talk to Me, a line that connects their two horror visions thematically and narratively. Why Bring Her Back might be the Philippou's horror masterpiece. While Talk to Me was praised for blending supernatural horror with intimate emotional themes, Bring Her Back builds on that approach with even greater depth and ambition. Instead of relying on shocking visuals or genre cliches, the film doubles down on psychological storytelling. The core of Bring Her Back revolves around grief, human vulnerability, and the disturbing allure of a cult that claims to reunite the living with their deceased loved ones. This horror film isn't scary simply because of its supernatural elements. It's terrifying because of what it reveals about people. The characters are drawn to the cult not out of ignorance or malice, but from a place of raw emotional need. That's what makes the film work so effectively. It doesn't just tell a ghost story. It asks, what would you do to see the person you lost again? In this way, the Philippou brothers have created a more mature and harrowing narrative than their debut, one where every scream is underlined by sorrow. The storytelling is sharp, the performance is raw, and the emotional undercurrent never wavers. As the cult's promises unravel into horror, viewers are forced to watch these characters grapple with their own humanity. Bring Her Back may lack the viral gimmick of Talk to Me's embalmed hand, but it more than makes up for it in depth and resonance. The central connection between Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. At first glance, Talk to Me and Bring Her Back are very different films. One focuses on reckless teens and a haunted artifact, the other on desperate adults and a resurrection cult. But both stories are anchored in a shared thematic core, trauma and the impossible desire to undo the past. In Talk to Me, Mia is haunted not just by ghosts, but by the unresolved grief over her mother's death. Her descent into the supernatural is driven by a need for closure, a need to understand, or at least hear from, the person she lost. The embalmed hand she uses to contact the dead becomes a powerful metaphor for how people often seek external means, healthy or otherwise, to process loss. The film becomes less about ghosts and more about the emotional cost of not letting go. Similarly, Bring Her Back explores characters who are dealing with loss and the desperate need to make sense of it. But here, the horror comes from what they're willing to do to reclaim that loss. The cult, which promises to bring the dead back to life, preys on people who are emotionally broken. The protagonists aren't simply victims, they're active participants, engaging in rituals because the alternative, grief, acceptance, seems far more unbearable. In both films, the supernatural elements are reflections of internal pain. The possession scenes in Talk to Me and the resurrection rituals in Bring Her Back aren't just scares, they're expressions of trauma, of characters crying out against a reality they refuse to accept. The line that links them. For sharp-eared fans, Bring Her Back includes a single line that acts as a quiet, perfect callback to Talk to Me. Without spoiling the exact moment, one character, standing on the precipice of another fateful choice, says, "What if they're not really gone?" The line echoes Mia's desperate question in Talk to Me, when she wonders if her mother is truly dead or somehow trapped, needing help from the other side. It's a simple line, but in the context of both films, it becomes a thematic bridge. It reminds the audience that both stories deal with that same universal fear, not of ghosts or demons, but of letting go. The line connects the emotional DNA of the two movies and offers a wink to viewers who understand the brothers' evolving exploration of grief, guilt, and the human impulse to cling to the past. From YouTube to A24, The Rise of the Philippou Brothers. Before their breakout hits, the Philippou brothers were known for their offbeat YouTube channel, Raka Raka, which specialized in chaotic, often violent, short films. That experience gave them a strong visual language, But it's their understanding of emotion, especially loss, that has given their films staying power. Where many horror filmmakers are content to focus on scares, the Philippous seem more interested in why we're scared and what scares us when the lights are back on. With Bring Her Back, they've matured as storytellers without losing their instinct for what makes horror feel real. Final thoughts. 2 films, 1 haunting thread. If Talk to Me was the Philippou brothers' promise to the horror world, Bring Her Back is the delivery. Both films are deeply unsettling, not because of monsters or gore, but because they tap into the human mind's darkest corners, our longing, our regrets, our inability to let go of the past. And in that single line, what if they're not really gone? We see the evolution of 2 films and 1 shared vision. The Philippous aren't just making horror. They're making elegies dressed in screams.